Now, Apple has become the first publicly listed US company to be valued at $1 trillion. Back in October 2001, when Apple launched its first iPod, the company had a market value of $6 billion. But thanks to the successful iPhone, the company has now overtaken its Silicon Valley rivals, such as Amazon and Microsoft. Well, Dr. Stephanie Hare is an independent analyst, and she joins me now. Stephanie, what do you make of the $1 trillion mark? I mean, it's pretty symbolic, isn't it, in telling us the way that Apple has gone over the past 42 years, from its inception to now?
I mean, one of the things that's very clear is that Apple's revenues are still largely driven by the sale of iPhones, right? So that was something like 61% of sales. So in some ways, it's the same old story. But one thing that I'd love to point out that I think is really interesting is that China now accounts for 18% of Apple's revenues. So on the one hand, China is really important for Apple in terms of its sales. It's also really important for its supply chain. And this means that if the United States and China have a real trade war, if we watch US President Donald Trump proceed with that, Apple's really in the crossfires. If we're looking ahead, that's a real risk for them.
So do you think, looking ahead, where Apple needs to concentrate itself perhaps is outside of China?
Well, I would just say more. I think it's probably going to be a good return on investment for them to just spend a lot of money lobbying Donald Trump to not have that trade war.
There were people who criticised Apple, weren't they, for the price of its iPhones, for the way that it was going. There'd been criticism of its boss as well, not having the personality of Steve Jobs. And yet, you know, this valuation kind of, laughs in the face of those criticisms, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, personality is one thing, but results are another, and that's what the market really respects and looks at. And the fact is that under the CEO, Tim Cook, we've seen Apple really start to grow its ecosystem and diversify that into a really interesting way, right? And that's a real strategy for him that I think he's going to be expanding in the next coming quarters.
Okay, Stephanie, we'll have you back on shortly, won't we, to look through some paper stories, so thank you very much.